field. That one's stalled to the right. Hunter on the move, racing back. It's over his head. It's gone. It's into the bullpen. This game is tied. This game is tied. David Ortiz. David Ortiz. David Ortiz.
This is Red Sox Beat on CLNS Radio.
I think it would be a big statement if John Farrell started Travis Shaw on opening day, and I'd be totally cool with it, because I think it would. If that doesn't give Sandoval motivation to play better defense and play better, period, nothing will.
I think they're going to make Jeter that first unanimous vote, and I hate that about baseball writers. If you belong in the Hall of Fame, you get voted in the Hall of Fame.
Achievement or a new milestone. They don't just be like, "Yay, we signed this player, so we're going to have a ceremony." Like, no.
Now to your hosts.
All right, Red Sox Beat, CLNS Media, of course, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for your Boston Red Sox. At CLNS Media on Twitter, Facebook, search CLNS Media. Don't forget the mobile podcast app, as well as clnsmedia.com, brand new website. We love it. It's fantastic. It's 10 times better than the old one. And please tell Nick Gelso that if you see him, because he agrees with you and he'll have a nice heart-to-heart about it. So, at Red Sox_Beat on Twitter, Facebook, Red Sox Beat Podcast. And, I think I covered them all for the most part. Don't forget to go, of course, and rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes as well. Season's around the corner. No Lauren tonight. Jess and myself have a guest on as well. But, Jess, how are we?
Doing well. Looking to answer some questions here and maybe get some clearance here from our guest that we're about to introduce here on some topics as spring training is about to start here.
Let's bring our guest in on Twitter at Smitty, Smitty, on MLB. It's Christopher Smith of MassLive.com, covers the Red Sox. What's going on? How are you, Chris?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
It's been a slow off season, and that's why I'm intrigued to talk to you, because you cover the team. It's been a slow off season. What in the world is going on with JD Martinez, and your personal/professional opinion? Do they get this guy, or is this going to be a waste of time for the Sox?
At this point, it's very difficult to say if they're going to get him, because Scott Boras is going to hold out, I feel, and this thing could, could go on through mid-spring training. It could go on through the season, really. I mean, there's already been a report that one Scott Boras client has said that he's willing to hold out until mid-year to get the money, to get the contract that he wants. Or I think it was either one Scott Boras client or just some big free agent there was a report about. So, listen, they need a big bat, but I wrote about it a couple of weeks ago. I'm fine if they do what they've done so far and just offer them the reported $125 million and not go up, because there really isn't a market right now. There's no other team, so they would be bidding against themselves. And we've seen so many times, the fans have criticized the Red Sox this offseason for doing nothing, and that's fair. I mean, they needed to add a middle-of-the-order hitter, and that's fair to criticize them. They should have been criticized for not, putting more effort into getting Stanton. However, we've also criticized them for signing some horrific contracts. Kyle Crawford, Hanley Ramirez, Pablo Sandoval. So, is there a happy median? We look at it, and maybe the most successful offseason they've had in recent history was before the 2013 season, when they did a bunch of small, short-term deals, like, Shane Victorino for 3 years, $39 million. They did Mike Napoli originally for 3 years, $39 million, but it was reduced to 1 year because of his hip issue, and they got Johnny Gomes for a couple of years, and David Ross and Ryan Nipson. Those were short-term deals, and they worked out. I'm looking at this market right now, and I think that there's a lot, like I've told this to a few people, there's a lot of uncertainty with some of the free agents on this market. You look at, like, Hosmer, and his OPS, it's in the 700s 1 year, 800s the next year, 700s the next year, 800s the next year. It's difficult to project how he's going to be as a hitter, 6 or 7 years down the road, or even 3 or 4 years down the road, and how he can, sustain his offense throughout a 7-year contract. Same can be said about JD Martinez because he's had injuries. I mean, he hit 45 home runs last year, but he only played 119 games because he has been a little bit injury prone. So this is a market right now where there's a lot of guys that are like, I mean, should they, it's just difficult to project how they're going to be if you give them a long-term deal when you can just wait next year, and then there's a lot better players like Bryce Harper on the market. So,
Chris, does he get the money though? That's my concern. Like, do they pay him $125? Are they going to be forced to pay him more? Because initially it was $200 million. That's what he was asking for. Or like you said, they're kind of already bidding against themselves. But ultimately, I do believe he's here this season. But like, do they pay him $125 million? Do they pay him more, or do you think that contract ends up being what he gets?
No, I think he'll get more because it's interesting. Like, so that the why a free agent would stay out until halfway through the year is because at that point, a team like the Red Sox might really need a power hitter, and there's no trades that could happen, and they really need a power hitter, and that would force them to go out and give a JD Martinez the contract that he would want. It's just a very interesting dynamic with Scott Boras because, you look at certain guys and like Prince Fielder before the 13 or 14 season, or maybe it was before the 2012 or 13 season. I don't know, whatever. He didn't have really of a market. It didn't feel like. He didn't sign until January 26th or something like that. And when he finally did sign with the Tigers, when they had Dombrowski as their GM, and it seemed like he was just bidding against himself, but Boras actually got the contract that he wanted. See, I think that GMs are finally looking at it and seeing like, okay, well, these contracts haven't worked out, these long-term deals. Even like Warner, Tom Warner mentioned it to us the other day. These long-term contracts haven't worked out, especially with Boras in recent years. I mean, you look at Jacoby Ellsbury, too, for the Texas Rangers, as I said, Prince Fielder. I mean, these just have not worked out, and so I think he'll end up with more than $125 million. But if he wants to play ball this year, then I don't think he's going to get $200 million. And if I was the Red Sox, as I said, stick with the $125 million deal. If somebody else ups the offer, and gets ahead of you, then go to 150. But I don't see going over 100 or going over 150 for this guy. If you're going to go over 150 to this guy, just wait till next year.
So, Chris, in terms of that, do you think that? I mean, your answer might change depending on if they get Martinez or not. But are there anybody else, any other free agents that you have your eye on that they could get this year, or like any positions that the team's lacking at this point? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so there's two, and I would think about bringing back Eduardo Nunez because we saw how effective he can hit at Fenway Park. His swing is made, it does well at Fenway Park. Now, he fits well in Boston. He's kind of a cocky guy. He's got a little bit of an attitude when he's out there playing. I like him. I'm not saying he's going to be the exact hitter that he was during the second half last year when he really was unbelievable. I mean, he posted some terrific stats. But he's an option, and that would be more of the shorter-term contract that I alluded to, like, a Shane Victorino type deal that you would get and sign him. Whereas if the contract doesn't work out, look, you're going to have contracts. Every contract isn't going to work out at some point, during the deal. But, with Shane Victorino, you got one good year out of him, and it was worth it, There's certain parts of the contract that he was injured and he didn't play, but, it didn't kill them because it was only a 3-year deal. So that's one right there with Eduardo Nunez. Sign him to a, 2-3 year deal at good average annual value. And, and if the contract won't kill you because it's short term. Another person that I've thrown out there, and I've gotten mixed comments back and forth, I threw the name out there on Twitter the other day, is Jose Bautista, and everybody's like, wow, why Jose Bautista?
Why not?
If
why not?
Yeah. Okay. So wait a minute. So people are saying to me, why Jose Bautista? Because if you're going to go with him, then why not just ride Hanley Ramirez? And my thought on this is this: you need to. I always said this from the beginning of the offseason. You need two hitters. And that's why I felt like Mitch Moreland. I at the beginning of the offseason, I said sign Martinez and sign Matt Adams. Well, they ended up re-signing Mitch Moreland. I thought that was going to be a precursor for a Martinez signing. That hasn't happened yet. However, I've always said you need two hitters on this team because you do not know how Hanley is going to produce in an everyday. I'm not saying he's going to play 162 games, but if he was to play 145 games, you would not know how he would be able to produce in 145 game sample size this year. Okay, so if you were to get Jose Bautista, you could have that scenario where, and I've heard a couple different things on Jose Bautista. First of all, I heard he got his eyes checked and he's going to wear some special glasses. I'm not saying that I've heard this from actual baseball people. I've just heard this from rumors from reporters and stuff. And I also heard that he had some sort of injury that would affect his swing last year. Now, we were looking at David Ortiz, back in 2008 or 2009, and he was falling off. And I'm not saying that he's David Ortiz, but I'm saying that why can't he become a good hitter again? Why can't he get bat speed back again if he was? If a certain injury was affecting him last year, if he did need his eyes checked, and if you get him, if he did need his eyes checked and you got them fixed, if you do get him on a 1-year deal, on like a 1-year pillow deal for him, it's a good deal for him to make some money maybe after this year if he produces well, you could get a great year out of him. Plus, as I said, you can't really rely on Hanley to play every day, and you could have more of that platoon role where Hanley plays some first base with Mitch Moreland. Mitch Moreland plays against righties, Hanley plays against lefties, and then Jose Bautista DHs on those days that Hanley's at first base. And then if Hanley's the better hitter, then Bautista, then put him at DH on the days that Mitch Moreland's at first. But and put Bautista on the bench, but at least have two options instead of one. So those are the two guys that I would look to if I was the Red Sox right now. Whether the Red Sox have interest in Bautista, I don't know. I know they have interest in Nunez still, but I don't know if they have interest in Bautista. And I know he had interest in them last offseason. So, I mean, he's always been kind of intrigued by Boston, and I've always been intrigued by him because he's a very well-spoken kind of, he gives thoughtful answers, and I think that some of the perception that maybe he's soft or whatever, not soft, but sensitive, like a David Price type, is kind of untrue because, even if he were to come here on a 1-year deal anyway, it's not like he's a 7-year deal where, the pressure's on with a big contract anyway. I think he could thrive here, and the fans would really like him. So I would look at those two. So
offensively, obviously, they need help, and I still want Eduardo Nunez back here. I think it's very important they get him, considering Pedroia. But, on the pitching side of things, they have some guys coming back. They're losing some people as well, so it's not 100% the same staff, but that's more or less like Doug Fister leaving. But the big thing has been Chris Sale, and we talked about this end of last season on this show, and other people have talked about it, but his endurance is going to be an issue. It's been an issue his whole career. Winter weekend was a couple weeks ago, and he said, we're working on it. I'm with the coaching staff. I'm working on the endurance because I know I need to pitch later into the season more successfully. Chris, do you think he can actually figure this out at this point in his career? Because forever he's been a strikeout pitcher, and that's going to continue. So can they really manage his innings? And I think the only thing that really, for me, as an upside is the fact that John Farrell's no longer his manager. But that being said, it's still on now Cora to manage this, and his managers in the past have not been able to manage him either.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the more interesting storylines because he is so important. I mean, when you get to the postseason, I was writing about it today for something for tomorrow. I mean, the Red Sox aren't the favorites, obviously, right now. The Houston Astros are, and the Yankees are. But if you have David Price and you have Chris Sale in your rotation, and they're pitching like aces in the postseason, then that changes everything. And the Red Sox are the favorites, right? And so, it's so important for him. And it's funny, like during winter weekend, Pedro said in front of the entire audience on that town hall meeting on the first night that he'd like to see Chris Sale strike out less batters and pitch more at contact, because that would conserve, pitches. And I looked at that today. I tweeted out some stats on that. So, he did actually pitch more to contact the year before he came to the Red Sox. And, so he was averaging like 15 pitches per inning in 2016 and then in 2017 he averaged 16 pitches per inning with, all the strikeouts, with the 308 strikeouts or whatever he had. So, if you look at it, 200, if that's, 20 starts or whatever, I mean, so it's basically like you'd be saving 2 games, if, he's throwing so many less pitches without the strikeouts. So, I mean, I talked to Daniel Levangie one-on-one at the winter weekend, and I was just like, I kind of look at this as like a whole issue with the entire staff. I was like, is it a mental thing at this point? Is it a small sample size? Because you look at it the past 2 years, and I only have this number in the top of my head because I wrote it today, but the past 2 years, the starting rotation, the reason that the Red Sox haven't advanced past the ALDS is because they haven't had home field advantage, and the starting pitching is stunk, okay, in the postseason. And they pitched 23 innings combined between the past 2 postseasons and allowed 28 runs. That's like a 10.49 ERA or something like that. So it's not just a Chris Sale problem, it's a whole entire rotation problem. And we know that David Price obviously pitched well, but but that was his relief role. Is there a mental hurdle that they need to get over? I don't know. But yes, I think it's important for all of them. And so Daniel Levangie said to me, it's going to be important that not only do the Red Sox, monitor innings and pitches and everything with Chris Sale, but everybody on the staff. And I think that's so true in today's game. Actually, Rob Bradford had something interesting with Josh Beckett. And Josh was like, at the end of last season, he was like, I only got to so many innings a year because, you didn't want to throw, like 190 or something, because, you wanted to get to the point where you were in the World Series every year and your best, you were pitching at your best in October. So if they need to reduce his innings some, that will help. But we'll see. I mean, the whole pitching staff needs to pitch better, obviously, in the postseason.
Yeah, so Chris, what do you think about this topic here? I was thinking about it earlier, the second base position, because obviously most people don't expect Pedroia to be back by the time the season starts. I think he thinks he will, but who knows if that's really true. I know you said you want Nunez back, but say they don't get Nunez. Do you think that Marco Hernandez will suffice as a second baseman until Pedroia returns, or does that concern you since he doesn't have that much experience?
Yeah, there's a couple interesting ones. Like, I was always a big Marco Hernandez guy. Like, it was funny. Like, I remember sitting up at the press box his rookie year, and it was like, in 2000, what was it, 15 or 16, and I was like, I like this guy a lot. And everybody was like, I remember Ian Brown being like, what are you even talking about? like the only person that's on the Marco Hernandez bandwagon. And then everybody kind of got on it last spring training because he came in and he was hitting, during spring training last year, he was really hitting the ball well throughout spring training and looked really good. And so everybody kind of got on the bandwagon. And at that point, John Farrell was like, well, he could be an everyday player. And then all of a sudden, he had a shoulder problem early, and it just, it affected his play early, and then, it ended his season in May. So I look at this, you have to think about it in terms of, how is a whole entire missing almost a whole entire year going to affect him? I mean, we saw it with like Sam Travis. Some guys can, miss a whole year and they'll come right back the next year and be fine. It affects some guys. I mean, Sam Travis had a hell of a time coming back after missing a whole year. So we'll see, but I think he's the most talented of the group. There's also Peter Gammons had written that Blake Swihart could play some second base, which is really intriguing because, he's out of minor league options. He has to make the team. He took ground balls at obviously first base and third base last year during September as a September call-up, played some first base in winter ball. They think he can play left field. And so, he could be like a Brock Holt type who can also catch, potentially. I mean, he couldn't play shortstop. But, that's another person. Then you look at Brock Holt and what can he be? Because we've seen Brock Holt be really good. I mean, he was an all-star, and he was a super utility all-star player that many people were comparing in 2015 to, to Ben Zobrist, like that type of player. And, really the injuries have derailed him the past couple of years, especially the concussions and the dizziness. And so maybe he's completely healthy, he has a good spring training, and he takes that job over. But I could, so I could see any three of those guys, or I could see them using a different, using, the best, whoever's the best guy on the day.
So one guy that's been talked about a lot, Chris, and again, we're talking to Chris Smith here of MassLive.com, is JBJ, just because of the fact of his trade value. People are like, oh, well, if you bring in JD, then you can trade Jackie Bradley, blah, blah, blah. I'm curious to your take of the Jackie Bradley situation. One, does he get traded? And if not, does he perform well enough that we'll forget about it? Because, his defensive value is there, his hitting is streaky at times, but there is still some trade value there, and the Red Sox still might be a move away from being ready to go for this season.
Well, it's funny, like, when Dave Dombrowski comes out and he's asked about the trade rumors from, I think it was Bob Nightingale, tweeted about it during the first day of the winter meetings, like the Red Sox are making Jackie Bradley available, and then Dave Dombrowski comes out and says, I don't know where he got, I don't know where that report comes from. He's not available. Well, obviously he has to say he's not available. Everybody's like, oh, Jackie Bradley's not available. Well, obviously he's, Dombrowski has to say that. So I think if they were to get the right trade for him and they would have Martinez in place, but I also think if they were to get Martinez, they would like a situation where, they could, have him play some outfield and, rotate, occasionally and rotate some of the other guys into the DH position, to get them off their feet sometimes. Benintendi at some of the bats at DH, and Jackie Bradley, some of the bats at DH. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. So, it's funny. Like, I look at Jackie, and he's a good guy. I first interviewed him at Portland. He's one of the nicest guys on the team, but he's extremely streaky, and he gets overvalued, I think, by a lot of the beat reporters because they look at his end of the year stats and in his defense, and when you get down to it, first of all, with defense, I think if you were to put, Mookie Betts in center field or Benintendi over center field and keep Mookie Betts in right field, or put, Mookie Betts in center field and put Benintendi in right field, you wouldn't have that drastic of a defensive downgrade. But look, he has like 1.5 months every year where he's like Mike Trout, and that makes him able to have statistics that look, pretty decent at the end of the year, the past couple of years. But, at times he's not producing at all. And so that's why I feel like if they could get a trade for him, they should do it. But I tend to believe that, and they would if they got the right guy, I would think, but they're not going to just settle either, because, you hear about that the report. Who was it? I'm trying to think. The Yasiel Puig. There was a rumor that Alex Spear brought up the rumor that the Dodgers floated out Yasiel Puig for Jackie Bradley. Those are pretty comparable players, but they're not going to just get rid of Jackie Bradley for anybody. They're going to have to get a really good player back in return. And like when I looked at the Jose Abreu thing, like the people, I was like, you would trade him in a second for Jose Abreu with prospects if you could, but I don't even think the White Sox would do that deal, So I just look at him as like, I think that he's overvalued a lot here, but I still think he's a good player. I just think he's a little overvalued. And why not trade him? Because that he's a Scott Boras client, and at the end of the day, he's like Jacoby Ellsbury. You just have a feeling that they're not going to make really any attempt to re-sign him, right? When he goes into free agency in a couple of years, I mean, he's like that Jacoby Ellsbury type. They're just not going to probably make any attempts. So,
yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. Obviously, barring or impending on what happens with Martinez. So, Chris, we've gone over several guys here on the team. So we kind of want to wrap here with you by getting your take on who do you think is the most important person on this year's team, whether it be someone in management or somebody on the field at this point with the current team they have right now.
Ooh, I would think it would be David Price, and I think that this is the biggest storyline heading into spring training. Not only his health, but how he, deals with the media this year, and whether he has a good attitude. A lot of people want to talk about how the media overblew the David Price stuff, that it got overblown. I was in there. I saw David Price on a daily basis. He looked miserable last year. He was very short with the media. When he did talk to us, he didn't do one-on-ones. He was, he looked like he was very mad at everybody. I don't know how.
Chris, that is called resting bitch face. That is resting bitch face at its finest.
He looked really mad at us. Okay, that's just I don't know how to describe it more than like that. To be put it nicely. Okay, so. So with him, I think it's important, like as I said before, if Chris Sale and David Price are pitching like aces in the postseason, this changes everything. So I think that he needs to have that he's so important to this team because, if he can pitch well in the regular season. Look, the Red Sox obviously don't have an offense that compares with the Yankees by any means, and they obviously want to get better production from their players. They think they can get better performance out of certain players like Xander Bogaerts and even Mookie Betts than they did last year. And they will have Rafael Devers for a full year. We'll see how he does. There's been certain projections. Bill James thinks he could hit 30 home runs. We'll see. But if anything can, the Yankees are the favorites. If anything that closes the gap between, as I wrote for tomorrow, if anything closes the gap between the Yankees and the Red Sox, it's the Red Sox starting pitching. And and because you look at it, and they do have two, they have two Cy Young Award winners in David Price and Rick Porcello. They have, Chris Sale, who should be a Cy Young Award. I mean, he's pitched like a Cy Young Award winner more than Rick Porcello at times. Everybody on their staff has been an all-star, including Stephen Wright and Drew Pomeranz. The only one, the only one that hasn't is Eduardo, I think. So it's like, they have a staff that can do good things and can close that gap between them and the Yankees. But I think the important thing is David Price. He needs to have a healthy year. He needs to come in with a good attitude because, he really did affect certain guys last year. You feel like, and I've said it before, like, a lot of guys hang out with David Price, and he is that type of guy that people draw to, even if he was cranky last year in certain things. Andrew Benintendi used to hang out with him a lot, hangs out with him a lot in the clubhouse. And it's like, you don't want him showing Andrew Benintendi, that it's okay to just, treat the media, bad. You want to show him it's good you want him to show Andrew Benintendi it's how to be a professional. And I think that's really what's lost in it is the importance of being a professional and and showing every guy if he wants to be a leader on this team, that he needs to be that he needs to show it both on and off the field. So I think he's the most important person coming into spring training.
All right, Chris, one more from us, and then we'll get you out of here.
Yeah.
I need to know because John Farrell obviously was like bottom of the barrel for me. But, I want you to fill the blank here. Alex Cora will be a blank manager this season.
I think he'll be a good in-game manager, and I think that's going a little bit like, it's going to be there's always, he's going to have his difficulties. There's going to be times when we question him, why'd you do this? Why'd you have this guy in there? This, that. The game moves fast on you. He's only been a bench coach. He managed in Puerto Rico. In the World Baseball Classic, Puerto Rico winter ball in the World Baseball Classic. So it's not like the major leagues where things really move fast and there's a lot of bullpen moves that need to be made and quick decisions that need to be made. We will be questioning some decisions of his, but throughout everybody that I've talked to seems like they're like, well, we knew he'd be a good man. We feel like he's going to be a good manager because he knows the game so well, and he was always talking about it when he was on the bench as a Red Sox player back in the day. In 2005 to 2008 or whatever, he was with the Red Sox. He was always managing the game in the dugout, and he was always saying the right things to do, so. I actually think he's going to be a good in-game manager, even though there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve. That will be good to have Ron Renicky on his bench as his bench coach beside him because he has some experience, obviously, as a manager. But I really do think he has the ability to be a good in-game manager. It might take a little bit. There's going to be some people that complain, as I said, to people that hated John Farrell. And it's not like I was a huge John Farrell supporter. I wrote in 2015 before anybody that when is he going to be on the hot seat? I wrote that column. So it's not like I was a huge John Farrell supporter, but I'm saying that anybody, even as likable as he can be for the Red Sox manager, he's going to be under scrutiny. If you're the Red Sox manager, you're going to be under scrutiny no matter how likable you are. And Cora comes off as a very likable guy. But, we saw with Terry Francona, he was called, Terry Francoma, and he, we look back now and we're like, he's the best manager in baseball, but there's times that he was under criticism and, so he's going to face criticism. It's how he deals with it. And I think he will be a good in-game manager. And I think that he'll help some guys like, David Price and other guys in that clubhouse that looked too much into the media last year and got their attention off the field to kind of focus it on what's going on every day in that clubhouse and not to focus on what, Chris Smith and Evan Drellick and everybody else writes.
All right, Chris, we'll leave it at that. Chris, appreciate the time. At Smitty on MLB from MassLive on Twitter. Obviously good stuff. And season's right around the corner, Chris. We're all very excited, and we appreciate you hopping on with us for a few minutes.
All right, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah, Chris Smith at Smitty on MLB for MassLive.com. Good work as always, and we appreciate him hopping on. Got to talk to real people because there's not a lot of news going on, so we figured we might as well throw some content out there and get someone else's opinion on the stuff we've already talked about. But look, there's a lot of intriguing storylines, and Chris was brought to you by our good friends at DraftKings. Basketball season is back, of course, and now that your favorite hardwood heroes have returned to action, it's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to the test to win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. At DraftKings, there are so many different ways to play, guys, that you public contests, cash prizes, or private contests where you compete against your friends as well. They've even got beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill level. The best part, though, is you get to draft a new team every day. Look, long season fantasy, you get stuck with injuries, things like that. You get the draft every day. Best part of fantasy, and of course you're going to win cash doing it. Just ask Dan from St. Louis or Jeremy from Austin. They both turned a $3 entry. That's it. Into $1,000. Huge cash prizes and bragging rights await only at DraftKings. So check it out. Use our code CLNS at DraftKings.com to play free with your first deposit for your share of $10,000 in total prizes tonight. Don't wait. Use our code CLNS at DraftKings.com now to choose your lineup, and you can seriously cash tonight. That's code CLNS at DraftKings.com. The game inside the game. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Just this season is going to be interesting, put it that way. And
it is.
There's a lot of intriguing storylines.
I like his price thing with him being the most important, because you could definitely say Sale, you could definitely say someone like Hanley or Betts, one of the main ones like that. But I kind of agree with Price, because that's a huge deal. If he's as good as he can be, this team could be incredible. If he's a little whiny baby like he has been, they might not be very good. So
even if it was last year, though, if he's a whiny baby but pitches well, whine all you want. I don't care, because this dude is going to be a top pitcher. It's how David Price pitches this year will decide if this team's rotation is going to be good or not. Because we know what you're getting from Chris Sale, you know what you're getting from Rick Porcello, presumably. Eduardo Rodriguez, Stephen Wright. You know what you're getting. It's David Price is the question mark in that rotation. If it comes back and pitches fine, and I don't care if he whines as long as he pitches well, then by all means, then you're going to have a good rotation, because then it goes Sale, Price, Porcello, whatever order you want to put them, Eduardo Rodriguez, those guys. That's okay.
Don't forget Pomerantz.
And Drew Pomeranz, your best friend. So, look, this rotation can be okay, but I think David Price is a very important piece, obviously, because he's a top 3 guy in this rotation, if not top 2, if he can figure it out, depending on what Porcello gives you.
And will he last the year? That's the biggest question.
That's the big
Is he going to actually pitch?
Will Chris Sale last the year? It's another big question.
Well, at least he's lasted every year with Price. Now you get this lingering elbow thing, and will he have to have surgery on it, or can he wait till his career's over, or is he going to fall apart in the middle of the season, or is it not going to matter at all?
No, he's going to pitch well because he can opt out and go somewhere else. It's going to be a good year for him. You know that, right? He's going to pitch out of his mind. He's going to shut his mouth because he wants to leave, and the only way to leave is to pitch well so you can opt out and get paid somewhere else. That's it. Big shout out to Chris coming on. We're going to end it there. Don't forget to follow us at Red Sox_Beat on Twitter, Facebook, search Red Sox Beat Podcast. Wow. And then don't forget to go follow the network at CLNS Media and CLNS Media on Facebook as well. CLNSmedia.com, brand new website. We love it. It's fantastic. It works so well. No Lauren this week. She'll be back next week with us. For Jess Thomas, I am Jared Scally. This has been Red Sox Beat again on CLNS Media. We'll talk to you next week.